So our next guest, if you ever listened to the Red Deer Rebels in 2006 and 2007, he's known for the phrases, and Dustan Moore is off to the penalty box. Stupid play by Dustan Moore, or that's the fourth press box hot dog I've seen Dustan Moore eat tonight. It is long time, now former Red Deer Rebels play-by-play man Cam Moon, and the brand new radio play-by-play guy for the Edmonton Oilers. Really exciting for him. So Cam, I know you're a busy guy. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and a little Red Deer Rebels reunion here with Dustin.
I love it. Hey, thanks for having me on, and good to see you're keeping Morsey out of trouble.
I wouldn't say that.
COVID would take more credit for that than us, but we're trying our best.
Probably.
So as I just mentioned, a huge career transition for you, and happened kind of fast. It's really funny. I'll tell you a quick story. The day that it was announced that you were the new play-by-play guy for the Oilers, I think at like 10 a.m. I texted Dustin and said, man, Cam Moon would be a great guest for this podcast. He's got the Rebels guy. We could talk a bit about the WHL right now. And an hour later, we saw on Twitter, Cam Moon announced as the new play-by-play broadcaster for the Oilers. So we thought, wow, we definitely want to get him still, but it's kind of funny that happened. So take us through that process first. I mean, congratulations. I know for me, I was aspiring a play-by-play guy myself, a sports radio guy. That is the ultimate pinnacle as a broadcaster. So take us through a bit the process and how that happened, because at least behind the scenes, it seemed to happen pretty quick.
Oh yeah, it absolutely did. So I was minding my own business. It was the Thursday before the NHL season started, and it was going to start on the Wednesday. 6 days before, and I'm walking my dogs. I get back to my place with the dogs. My phone rings, and it's Brent Sutter. And Brent's like, "Hey, Mooner, the Oilers called, and they asked me permission to talk to you. And they have it looks like they have an opening, something with the radio broadcast." I'm like, "All right, great." So they're going to give you a call. All right, wonderful. So I get the call about 10 minutes later, and they're like, "Hey, here's the situation. Jack Michaels is going to do all the regional television games. And when he's doing regional television, we're looking for somebody to do the games on the radio on 630 CHED, the Oilers radio network." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah." They're like, "Would you be interested?" "Yeah, I'd absolutely be interested." So that was on the Thursday. I did an interview on the Friday. I did another interview on the Saturday. They offered me the job on the Sunday. Monday it got announced. And then the Tuesday morning, and Monday was just a whirlwind gong show. And then Tuesday morning, I took about 10 minutes to throw some clothes in my vehicle because I had to be at practice. And practice was at 11 o'clock. So I had to leave, fairly early. So I was out the door. I went straight to Rogers Place. I watched practice, had an orientation, and then I called my first game 2 days later. So it happened so fast, it was ridiculous. I can't tell you the emotion. I was overwhelmed. I grew up in Edmonton. That's where I played most of my minor hockey. That's where, after I was done playing junior, that's where I went to school. I went to Nate. I mean, that's my hometown, and that's the team I grew up loving. So getting the opportunity to call games for the team that I love, it was, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe my good fortune. Talk about being in the right place at the right time. That's pretty much what it was. And my expectation level was high. It's exceeded that. I've had more fun than you could possibly imagine.
And so 22 years in Red Deer, and just like that, in a couple days, you're off to Edmonton. But let's talk about that, because 22 years with the Red Deer Rebels, you never missed a single game. Walsh missed the very first episode of this podcast, and you're 22 years, and that's even, you want to talk about the absolute legend, Bob Ridley. Even he missed one game because apparently his daughter's wedding was more important than a regular season Medicine Hat Tigers game. But I mean, that commitment is absolutely off the charts. So I don't think you can really condense it into a short a couple of sentences, but just talk about your time in Red Deer with the Rebels, because that's another, when you talk about for broadcasters, being able to call the games in the WHL is amazing. So just talk about your time in Red Deer.
Yeah. Well, I was so excited when I first came, for sure. I was doing games in the BC Hockey League. I did 3 years in Nanaimo with the Nanaimo Clippers before I got here. And I really wanted to do games in the WHL. And I wanted to do it in a city that I knew I would enjoy. And I was very familiar with Red Deer because I used to work at the Sylvan Lake Goaltender School in the summer when I was playing junior. And they would put us up in Red Deer. So I'd spent a fair bit of time in Red Deer through various summers. So it was nice because it was convenient. And it was very familiar, and it was close to Edmonton. So it was. And then what a run! I got hired by Wayne and Terry Simpson, and then after my first year, they sold the team to Brent Sutter. So Brent inherited me, and then the team went on that amazing run. The 2001, they go to the Memorial Cup, they win the whole thing. In 2002, the team goes to the WHL final, lost in the WHL final. In 2003, they go to the final, lost in the final. In 2004, they went to the Eastern Conference final. So you had 4 years where they went 3 rounds of playoffs or better. That's pretty good. You put that up against, a lot of different junior programs, and it's pretty good. So that was it was just magical. Those playoff runs, and when the weather would get warm and the rinks would be full. And that was just such a blast. And all of it, hosting the Memorial Cup in 2016, that was unbelievable. We had the whole hockey world looking at Red Deer and seeing what kind of show that we can put on here. And there's been so many. You can think of the World Juniors in '95. You can think of different curling events, the Canada Winter Games that we had here a couple of years ago. That was pretty special. The Memorial Cup to me is really one of the best 12 days of hockey you can ever be around. And then you've got all the other things going on, like the fan fest stuff, the hockey house where you can go have a beer after the game and see some live music and stuff. There's so many things going on. It just makes it such a great event. And I thought everybody involved in Central Alberta did such a great job. So yeah, it's fun. The WHL is the greatest. I wasn't looking to leave. I wasn't seeking that. I love calling games in the Western League. I love everything about the WHL, the different towns you get to go to, the players that you get to see, you get to call, you name it. Everything about it is great. So I can't say nothing but good things about my time in Red Deer.
Speaking of different places you get to go to when you worked for the Rebels, did you have a favorite barn to go to? What building was your absolute favorite to go see?
I don't know that I can nail this down to one. That's really hard for me, but I'll give you a few. The rink in Brandon, which used to be called the Keystone Center. I don't know what the hell they call it now, but anyway, the Keystone Center, it's been there forever. It's about a 5,000 seat, one bowl. I absolutely love it. The broadcast location is amazing. And those guys, they put there's this popcorn stand right by where you go up to the press box where they pop it fresh. You can't do that. So the press box is right over top of it. And it's just that's fresh popcorn. Yeah. So there's no way I can walk by that without getting some for pregame warm-up. I drill the hell out of a box of that corn during the warm-up. So, but that because of the broadcast location. Regina's really good for broadcast location. So is Prince Albert, for that matter. So I enjoy calling games in all those rinks. The old one in Medicine Hat, my word, that might have been the best. And probably because of the Red Deer and Medicine Hat rivalry, that certainly had something to do with it. But the press box, the visitor radio was small, but the view was great. The benches are across from each other. The place is absolutely jammed. The people make nothing but noise. They go absolutely crazy in there. You were kind of right downtown, down by the river, down by the ballpark. That screamed junior hockey. And then they had all the old pictures in the lobby, and you could really drink in the history that is the Medicine Hat Tigers. And I appreciate the history in all the rinks throughout the league. Yeah, it's to me, that's one of the lures of the WHL that just makes it so cool, is the rich history. And Medicine Hat has very rich history. So Medicine Hat right up there for me. Over in BC, those rinks are all kind of new and fancy, which are nice. I kind of enjoy the older rinks a little bit. Like the old one in Portland, the Winterhawks play some of the games in the Memorial, which is the old one, and then some in the Rose Garden, which is the new one. The new one's beautiful. It's an NBA building. It could be an NHL building, but the old one is like going into a Coliseum museum, like they haven't changed the darn thing in there, which is great. And it's pretty cool. And of course the Trailblazers used to play there, and the Winterhawks have been playing in there since they moved from Edmonton in 1976. They've been playing in there. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. I just, there's none of them that are really bad, to tell you the truth. I mean, the new one, and I say new, but it's probably been around for quite a while, in Seattle, where they play in Kent. The rink's great. Visitor broadcast location's a little tough because they put you in the corner.
Probably do that on purpose, eh?
I guess. I don't know. For the first and third periods, it's okay because the visiting team is skating towards you and you know who your own guys are. But in the second period, when Seattle, a team that you only see once a year, when they're skating towards you, it's pretty tough because you can't read any numbers. So you're guessing a little bit as to who the players are. But the rink's really nice. They did a great job with it.
Mooner, you've had a ton of great experiences. You might have left one out. I thought the 06-07 when the last 20-year-old rookie for the Rebels came into play. I thought maybe that'd be one of your cool experiences, but I guess not. That's
up
fine.
There. Yeah,
that's fine.
Up
but
there.
No, the Rebels have been in the news and all over the media and Twitter here recently with their season about to start, I think right around where our episode's about to air. I just wanted to get your thoughts on the cool and amazing work that they're doing to make sure these kids are safe and make sure they get some games going with the setup there in the suites.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. With all the Alberta teams starting, I know that was a concern of all the teams. Like normally, the players would live with billet families, which has been happening since junior hockey began. But with the virus, and then you're putting, players in with families. I don't know how comfortable the families would be. I don't know how comfortable the players would be given the way things are right now. That at some point in the Rebels office, they're like in discussion with Westerner Park, we could just put them in the suites. Nobody's in the rink. They're not going to have any fans. I don't know how many suites are in the building. There's got to be about 30 of them. So they moved a bed into each suite, and each player's got his own suite. And well, you guys know what the rink's like. The concourse is big and it's wide, so you can like cater the meals to the concourse. They can, let's be honest, like a mini stick game is going to crop up at some point. Like that's happening. So like you can do a lot of different things, and then they can put hockey games on the video scoreboard. And I know at some point they're going to be like, okay, enough's enough, because you're going to be there for like 3 months. Like I know it will get old, but it's kind of a cool situation. The rink set up the way it is just lends itself to this. So it'll work. And the players will literally live in the rink. There's no shortage of bathrooms. They can work out in the dressing room. Like you can do everything you need to do and never leave the barn.
So are the players going to school at all during that time, or are they just being homeschooled at?
They'll do online.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of how they've been doing it the last few years anyway.
Okay.
They haven't been in high school here locally. It's all been kind of online for them. So yeah, they can do it that way. They won't leave the rink.
The only unfortunate thing for all of those players is they won't be the first Red Deer Rebel to sleep in one of those suites. Because I know in the last couple of years, I've seen Dustin Moore have a couple quick naps in some of those suites when we're there for Rebels games. So they won't be the first, but they'll probably be set up a little better than he was for those. Yeah.
Yeah. Sleep, pass out. Yeah, whatever. It's a fine line, Morty. It's a fine line. And there's no denial. No. I heard no denial there. None.
No, I think we got some video evidence of that's lying around somewhere. So
Oh, I bet.
So Mooner, you mentioned the Memorial Cup season and how special that was. Maybe just talk about a couple highlights that really come to top of mind when you think about that season as a whole.
Oh, absolutely. The stat that blows my mind about that year is from the middle of December on, that team never lost 2 games in a row, including the playoffs. So that's from the middle of December to January to February to March to April to May. Never lost 2 games in a row. Like, that's pretty hard to do. That was impressive. And going back to the year before, that team lost out in the first round to Kootenay. Kootenay went on to win the WHL championship that year. And the Rebels got filled in that first round, pretty bad. There was one of the 4, they lost 4 straight, and 3 of them were pump shows. So they knew it had to go up, their level had to go up. And they were returning almost the whole team. So that was good. That was a positive, but they knew they had to, take it up a notch. And the team got out of the gate pretty good. They were a number 1 club, basically pillar to post. The trades that were made at the trading deadline were huge. Martin Erat came in. He was a big part of the team. He led them in scoring in the playoffs. Darcy Robinson was a big, strong defenseman that came over in that same trade with the Saskatoon Blades that became a really big part of the defense core. The year before, the team had made a deal to get Ross Lupischuk from the Prince Albert Raiders. Scored 28 goals that year as a defenseman, and that is still a Rebels record for goals by a defenseman. Lupischuk had just this huge shot from the point. But you saw the maturation of younger players. And you had Boyd Gordon, and you had Joel Stepp and Jeff Wowitka and Doug Lynch. And those guys all turned out to be really good WHL players. Justin Mapletop wins the WHL scoring with 120 points in his 4th and final season with the Rebels. He was a huge part of the team's success. Shane Bandera was incredible the way he played throughout the season and in the playoffs. It was so special. I remember they beat Lethbridge in the first round. They lost the first game in overtime to Lethbridge, a team that they had beat, I want to say, by 9 or 10 goals about 5 days earlier. So they lose the first game in overtime and then win 4 in a row. They play Calgary. They lose the first game against Calgary. Second game goes to overtime. And I remember thinking, if Calgary gets the OT winner here, it's going to be a long road back, being down 2-0 and then going to Calgary for the next 2. So I was definitely concerned. It goes to overtime. The rink's packed because, of course, you're playing the Hitmen, so a lot of their fans come too, which is great. And Colby Armstrong scored on a wraparound goal. Brady Block was in net and kind of got crossed up as to which way Armstrong was going to go and guessed wrong. Armstrong wraps the puck in. The roof comes off the rink. The place goes crazy. And then it seemed like the Rebels were off to the races in that series anyway. And they won it in 6, yes, because the final one was in Calgary. Played Swift in the 3rd round. That I thought was the toughest test of the playoffs. The Rebels beat Portland in 5 in the league final. And Portland was good, but I didn't think they were quite as good as Swift Current. I thought Swift Current was really good. The Rebels won it in 6, but it was, at one point, they were down 2-1 in that series, and the games were really close. It was tough to get a goal. But Red Deer was just found a way. They were determined. It was a determined group. They really wanted to go all the way with this thing. And then you get to the Memorial Cup, and they play Val-d'Or in the final, but it went to overtime in the round robin against Val-d'Or. Red Deer did themselves a big favor in winning the first 2 games, and the way the tournament had gone and the way the other games had gone, it gave the Rebels a bye to the final, regardless of how their 3rd game went. So they played against Regina in the 3rd game. Regina had to win to get to the tiebreaker. Red Deer played their lineup accordingly in a game that meant absolutely nothing to them. And Regina won, but Red Deer's going to the final anyway. So they had the benefit of not playing in the semi and to kind of rest some guys. And even still, that final went to overtime against Val-d'Or. It could have went either way. Val-d'Or had a great team, but Red Deer was able to win, and the party was on that summer in 2001.
How do you remember every one of these single games here? Like, we're talking 20 years ago. I mean,
Wow, those were big
Yeah.
games.
No, that's true. I remember where I was when Red Deer won the Memorial Cup. I was at the golf course, and we were watching it on the TV there, and the whole golf course just went nuts. It was 20 years ago, and I'll never forget that.
After they won, so that was an afternoon game, which leaves you a lot of time after the game. So, as you can imagine, there was a lot to celebrate. So the celebration was on, and we had like a banquet room at the hotel in Regina, and that went very well. And then I remember, because it was in Regina, like we could have flown and then got bussed around. And I remember Brent was like, "No, we want our bus there. We'll just bus there." So we bussed there. We didn't fly. So we took our bus. That's how because we were leaving days before anyway. Who cares? So that means we were going to stay that night and come back to Red Deer the next morning. So we get on the Rebels bus to make the 8-hour trip, or whatever the heck it is, the 7.5, back to Red Deer. And it was the most quiet bus you've ever been on, as you would imagine. Very quiet, because there wasn't a lot of sleep. So the Memorial Cup is like just sitting in the aisle of the bus. It's just sitting there. I don't know what the protocol is now, but back then there wasn't any, and it's just sitting there. So we're coming through Kindersley, and I think Brent just wanted a blizzard, so we stopped at DQ. That's it. We're all getting blizzards. Get off the bus. So we bring the Memorial Cup. The players bring the Memorial Cup into the DQ. Well, the DQ manager thought this was the coolest thing in the world. He phones the Kindersley Howler, or whatever the heck the local newspaper is. Guy shows up, like the mayor showed up. And it was, next thing you know, the Dairy Queen was full. We're taking pictures, and yeah, that was kind of cool. And then when we got to the rink, there was a lot of people waiting for us in the parking lot, and yeah, it was amazing. Like to see that team have the run that they did, have the success that they did, and the way all of Central Alberta got behind it. I mean, that's what junior hockey's all about. It was outstanding.
And, Lund, you talk about good memory, 22 years, Cam, with junior hockey, you've got, and it's even rare, but you got 5 years max with a player on the team, and there's a lot of turnover. Now, you don't have to do it now because it would take a long time, but do you think you could, because broadcasters have incredible memories, if you had to sit down and write every single player that has ever played for the Red Deer Rebels, like how well do you think you would do on that?
Oh God, I wouldn't do that well. And I know I wouldn't. You know why I know? Sometimes I go down the hockey DB rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Like I can get on that for hours. And if I look at old Rebel teams, mostly the ones that weren't successful, it's like my mind has tried to block them out. So the teams that weren't really good, I don't remember a lot of those players. Like I'll look at the name, I'll be like, I don't know if I actually remember that face. You know what I mean? There'll be a few guys on the good teams. Yeah, you remember them because of the success, I guess. I don't know. I guess, if I sat down, I could probably do okay. But that's a lot of players that come through. And you find on the years that aren't as successful, you get more of a revolving door. So you see a lot of different players because you're trying to improve and see if you can make your lineup a little bit better and stuff. Whereas if the team's doing really well, there usually aren't a lot of changes. So I guess those are easier that way.
Going the other way with it, over your 22 years, do you have a favorite player or a person that sticks out in your mind as maybe the most entertaining player that you've called a game for, or that you've
on the ice or off the ice?
let's say on the ice that's played for the Rebels. Okay. Like maybe not the most skilled, but maybe the most entertaining, where you knew this player was going to do something that night, or whether it be get in a fight or score a hat trick or just pump up the crowd one way or the other.
Jim Vandermeer was one of those guys. I thought I always had so much respect for Jim, because I remember where he was when he started to where he was when he left the Western League. It was an amazing journey for this guy. He went from being just barely good enough to play in the league to about to be an NHL player. Like, he came so far in 4 years. It was unbelievable. And then I thought he was going to break the Rebels all-time penalty minute leader, because he had, in his first 3 years, had amassed quite a few.
Yeah.
But in his 20-year-old year, nobody would fight him. So his penalty minutes weren't very high. His last year, he didn't break the record because he had very few takers, because he did beat the wheels off quite a few dudes when he was 19. And at 20, like, there weren't a lot of people lining up. So I mean, he was the consummate leader.
Right. If
he said something, it's done. Jim, we need this done. It's done. Like, he took control. So that for sure, because I had that respect for him and how hard he worked to get where he was. Right. Colby Armstrong was always entertaining on and off. Just such a character. And he was good on the ice, but he would like get under the skin of the opposition because he has a sharp wit and would say whatever. Carson German, I remember him because he could score, and he wasn't a big guy, but he had a left that was devastating. And I saw a few people make the mistake of underestimating what he could do with that left. And once word got out, he didn't get many takers either. Although you wanted to, keep him on the ice because he was a good player offensively. But not many people took liberties with him because of that. Like some of the characters, like Bryce Toma was like just such a good dude that, I don't know, Bryce, and when he came on as an assistant coach, Bryce and I just had so much in common that he became such a good friend. Once he came back, and I knew he was when he played, but it's a little different when he comes back and you're kind of working together. Cam Ward, one of the greatest guys ever. Ryan Nugent Hopkins, one of the nicest kids we've ever had come through here. And he was just this amazing hockey player that if you didn't know better, you just think he was a regular high school kid. Like he just
I think you still would.
He just went about his day.
Still could. Yeah.
I think he still would. He hasn't aged a day. So yeah, there's been so many though, like Devin Francon. I still talk with Devin Francon. Like he's such a good guy and lives here. Dearmid Kelly still lives here. And, like those guys that came through here and played and still live around the area. And, Jeff Wawitka, I talk to him every once in a while. He's an assistant coach in Sherwood Park with the Crusaders. And yeah, you could just tell the very first day he got here that, this is a really good guy. And we're going to have a lot of fun. And he was one heck of a good defenseman. And yeah, there's been so many though. I could go on and on and on about good guys that have come through here that you just, some that you don't even hardly get to know. And then some that as soon as you talk to them, you're like, okay, got a bit of a connection with them. Justin Taylor was like that when he came to Red Deer as a 20-year-old. And I was like, yeah. And he grew up in the same part of town of Edmonton as me. Alex Petrovic did too. So we had that instant connection from that part of town. But yeah, it's that's the thing, the relationships and the players you meet. It's that's part of what makes the WHL so good.
Well, Dustin's probably just sitting there thinking how many times you pronounced his name wrong when you were listing off all those guys. But that's a cool one too. I think the fact that still, however many years later, he can just text you and you come on it and do this interview with us, which I think is cool. So.
See, I remember when Morrissey was like this phenom minor hockey player. And everybody's talking about Dustan Moore. So I was like, I got to go watch this guy play. So I did. And Morrissey, you were pretty good. you were pretty good. And I know we tried to get you here. We didn't get you till you're 20, but it was good that we did. because we really needed you. It would have been nice if we would have got you a year or two earlier, I'm thinking. But yeah, like that was pretty cool. And what I liked about that is you're the hometown guy. You know, you grew up going to games and stuff. And that's cool too when that happens, because it doesn't happen a lot. When you think about it, with a WHL draft, and you know, you have a 1 in 22 shot of getting the local guy, you know, like you might get him, but you might not. Like, it's a bit of a luck of the draw. So it is cool when you get the guy that, you know, that grew up here and loved the team when he was a kid, and, you know, came out and rocked it as a 20. And yeah, that's right. Scored some nice goals. And
well, Mooner, you talk about the hometown touch, and you know, any hockey fans that listen to this podcast are going to be pretty jealous people, along with Kev and Ryan and myself, that you know, you're the new local hometown guy for the best league in the entire world. Like you've made it. You've made the NHL, and you're at the top of your job. Like that's an amazing feat. And I think another thing people are pretty jealous of, and me included, is you just getting to see these kids go from 16 to 20 years old and develop into NHL, and even just the ones who get careers out of it. But, you know, maybe touch on the most not a Red Deer Rebel, but maybe the most skilled player in the WHL in your 22 years that you got to call, that maybe is now an NHLer that people will know.
Well, Ryan Nugent Hopkins would be right up there, because you could tell right from the get-go. I'll start with him, because when he was the first overall Bantam pick in his year, so okay, you know he's going to be good. But when we brought him up at 15 and he played some games, and you're like, oh my God, like, he could have played the whole year at 15 and wouldn't have looked out of place, because his skill level was so high. But he wasn't very big or heavy at that time. And he still isn't really that heavy. But yeah, his skill level was through the roof. And that's why he went first overall in the NHL draft too. But other guys that we've seen come through here, certainly Morgan Riley, a little more of a recent vintage. When he was in Moose Jaw, and I remember going, we were in Moose Jaw, and we were in there, I think it was for a Friday night game, but we got there on the Thursday, and Jesse Wallen was coaching then. So Jesse and Bryce Tolma and I walked from the hotel to the Crushed Can in freezing cold temperatures to watch a AAA midget game. And it was Derek Pouliot was playing for Moose Jaw. Morgan Riley was playing for Notre Dame. And they had both been taken in the WHL Bantam draft already. So it was their 15-year-old year. And they were the best two players on the ice by a long shot. And I remember watching Morgan Riley going, holy cow, this guy is absolutely dominating this game as a 15-year-old defenseman in that league, which is very difficult to do. And just looked like he was everywhere. He was all over the ice. And then he gets to Moose Jaw and was doing the exact same thing at 16. And by 18, he's in the NHL. Wow. So he was right up there in goal. I mean, Carey Price, you could tell right away he was a pro. Same thing with Cam Ward. Those were guys that at 17 years old looked like pros. And there's not a lot of goalies that do that. You find some at 19 or 20, they look like pros, or they look like maybe, and then they'll play pro for 3 years and then maybe get a shot in the NHL. Like, that's the more regular route for goaltenders. But guys like Price and Ward were pretty good right out of the box. So they had kind of a quicker path because they were so much farther ahead. Those guys definitely stand out as well. I think those are the ones that, like, where you go, wow, like they're really Leon Draisaitl, I guess, too, to some degree. Like, you could tell he was really, really good and strong. And then when he went to the Oilers that 19-year-old year and started, and then got sent back and traded to Kelowna, along with Josh Morrissey, who's another one. I thought Morrissey and Draisaitl, those two guys playing for Kelowna, just, you could see like, oh, these guys are going to be NHLers way sooner than not. So and they took them to a WHL championship, and they lost in overtime of the Memorial Cup final that year to the Oshawa Generals in Quebec City. I mean, they were so close. But yeah, those are guys that really stood out. Matt Dumba is a guy that really stood out. You knew he was going to be an NHLer. Basically, the second year he was here in Red Deer. Just the way he competed, the way he could skate, the way he could hit. For a guy that really isn't that big, but he's strong. And you could tell like his skill level was so high.
And there are some players who just aren't as skilled, and so they want to fight. You know, they got to do a little bit. And I know Dustan Moore had a little bit of everything. And just to test your memory, I know you only got like 50 games of Dustan Moore, and we all know he was -1 that whole year somehow, playing on a line with some future NHLers. What do you remember about Dustin as a hockey player?
Well, you did touch on it because he could do a little bit of everything. He could play physical, he could drop the mitts, but because he had the experience he had in junior A, when he came to us, like he's ready to go. And again, like I said, it would have been great to have him a year or two earlier for sure. But Dustin could play. And I saw that when he was in Bantam, that he could play. So yeah, it was an all-around player. Somehow -1. I don't know. Maybe the statisticians across the league somehow messed those up, because that seems like it's a little bit off.
Yeah, I'm here running a basement podcast, and I think my memory's not as good as yours, Cam, but I think we had 6 NHLers from that year. Brandon Sutter, Marty Hansel, Kirill Starkov, Jordan Henry, James Reimer. Am I at 6 yet?
I think it's 5.
Yeah.
5. That's pretty good.
I might be missing
You're probably
one.
just including yourself
so,
in that list.
Yeah.
Well, I forgot Cam Moon.
Oh,
there's my 6th one.
Yeah.
But Dustin did brush up against some future NHLers. And I know this is the story. Dustin has told it to us. It's one of my favorite Dustin stories. He came up against a player named Dale Weise. And we have a little surprise for you. I want to see if you remember this. Dustin actually dug up a little bit of a clip. So we'll see if you remember this here.
Oh, boy.
Oh, this is, I think, a different... There's Bob Ridley, the legend. Yeah.
Oh, the old rink.
That rink was awesome.
The best.
I remember Brent getting beers poured on his head.
Yep.
By who? By a fan?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So first we'll watch it and enjoy it, and Cam, you get to listen to yourself here.
Face off to the right of Yonkman. Lethbridge up 2-1 on Medicine Hat in the first, and the Impact Energy out of town.
Here we go.
Oh, we're getting a tilt. Dustan Moore is going to go at it with Dale Weise. They got the gloves off and the helmets off, and we're going to go at it in the Swift Current zone. They hook up. Weise gets in a quick right. Gets in a couple more. Now Moore's trying to get set up. Throws one. Weise and Moore. Oh, there's a good one by Moore.
Oh, no.
Weise now throws a couple of laps. Moore's trying to...
Hey, you're staying on your skates.
And now we got elbow pads flying off. It's a yard sale out there. Now Moore's got the right free and tries to get one over the top. The two of them will wrestle each other down to the ice.
Mooner was pretty nice to me in the announcing and the play-by-play, I'll tell you that much.
Oh, hey, the home team guy never loses a fight on the radio.
Oh, man, I remember that so hilariously because I remember he was bugging Dale, like he was a tough guy and he could score too. And he was bugging Marty Hansel all game. And he had done something the shift before. And I remember me and Brett Sutter and Ted Vandermeer, we all had a little bit of sandpaper and we looked at each other and said, okay, who's fighting that guy? He's 6'3" and whatever he was, 210. And we were just little guys. And I lined, we lost Mooner, I think.
Hold on, I'll be right back.
I just happened to line up against him. And as soon as I asked him, he's like, yeah, let's go. And I remember after the fight was over, I go in the dressing room and both my eyes were swollen shut and Radar's got two ice bags on my face and Brent comes in and goes, "Attaboy, Morsey, we're to take care of Weise."
I think Cam just turned his video off there to let you relive what you were seeing after fighting Dale Weise, which was nothing. Yeah.
That was gold. Wow. Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, you know what? That team was pretty good. We lost in 7 to the Tigers. That was an unbelievable series. I actually thought we were going to win that game 7 going into it, but that was a good series that year. Yeah, that rink though, hey, like my word. In the playoffs, nothing better. Nothing better.
It is
than
the
that.
definition of a barn. And I know I actually got to intern there under Bob Ridley. Like I think the last year they were in it, and it's hilarious too because, you know, I was up there with Bob Ridley, pretty nice press box. They have you guys, the visiting team, like it's basically the size of Barbie's dream house that you guys are broadcasting into, right? And like Dustin said, it is not set up for the visiting team at all.
No. Not at all.
What about the Centrium?
Smart.
Does the Centrium have a nice place for the visiting team's broadcasters?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Huh. So just the other WHL teams that kind of screw you over.
Wow.
There's some rinks. Yeah.
The rink was built in 1970. So I mean, it's not really set up for, you know what I mean? It was tight up there. There wasn't a ton of room because the press box wasn't big. But the view was perfect. The location was great. Just it wasn't large.
There's a lot of rink. The Olds Grizzlies, their rink. You don't talk junior A. The visiting team, you're standing in the stands. You got your stuff plugged into the wall, and you're standing in the stands. And I was there.
Yeah.
Cam, you know Gino DePaoli, the Okotoks Oilers, and I know we were doing a playoff game there, and we're standing in the stands. And I fell off and took our whole setup with us, and we missed half the game because we were off the air. So yeah, that's about as glamorous as it got for me in my broadcasting days. But yeah, a lot of rinks are. But I think that's where the best stories come from, right? And injuries.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
So Mooner, I'm very interested in your job, and and obviously it's changed a little bit. But if you think back to the WHL days, like how many hours a day are you spending on game days, kind of just prepping and looking at stats and all that stuff?
Well, a game day, so like a regular game day at home is a 12-hour day. That from the time I got going, I would have to stop at the radio station, do the Rebels report, and get there about 8:15-ish. By the time I got that done, I could get to the rink at about 9. At 9, I'm putting together the game note packages. So I should have information sent to me from the other teams. If they played the night before, it should be sent to me after the game. So it should come at about midnight-ish. It should be there when I get there. If they haven't played the night before, then I've already got it. So I put together the game note packages, of which I've compiled that information the day previous. Or if we've played the night before, I've done it after the game. Once I get those things going, I would go set up the press box. The players would show up for either a morning skate or a morning workout. I would get all my interviews done in the morning because I don't like bugging people before the game if I can avoid it. I would talk to a Rebels coach for the pregame show in the morning. If the other team was already here, like on a road trip, I would talk to the other team's coach in the morning. If it was just there and back, like Alberta team, then I would have to wait till they get to the rink later. But I'd like to get everything done earlier if I can, because I know how it is from the hockey point of view. The less distractions before the game, the better. So I like to get stuff done in the morning. By the time then I'd have to edit some audio. Quite honestly, the prep work for that opposition that night is done days previous, because the game day I got a lot of things going on. I don't have a ton of time for that. I would go home for lunch. I'd come back in the early afternoon. I would then watch video of the team that we're playing, their last game, going over all the prep work that I had done days previous. But I would help burn names and numbers into my head watching video. So that was like really handy once that became available to me. So I'd watch a period or two. If they were a team from out west that we don't see as much, I would watch more. Then I'd have to record the thing for the video scoreboard at about 4:00-ish. And then by 4:30, I gotta go downstairs, set up the media room, get ready for I would help out the off-ice officials. So I would greet the visiting team when they show up. I would get their starters and their scratches and their line combinations. Then I would get that information from the Rebels coaches. I would take it to the office, get all the printouts needed to be printed out, take stuff to the media room, then head upstairs to get ready for the post-game show or the pre-game show. So then it's broadcast time. And then when the game's over, if we're playing the next night, I got to update the notes and stats after the game. So I would do that in my office. Usually I'd put a West Coast, Western League radio broadcast on. So like if Kamloops or Vancouver or Kelowna were playing, or one of the American teams, didn't matter. I'd put a game on so I could listen to that while I was updating stuff. So like on a regular game day, I would leave the rink at about 11:30ish to go home. So it's a long day. The home games are, the road games are actually a little bit easier because somebody else is putting together all the other stuff. So you could worry more about the broadcast. At home, you had to make sure that you did your broadcast prep the day before or the day before that. Like you have to be on top of that, because if you just leave it till game day, you're doing so many other things. You're not going to put in the proper work, and then you're not going to know what you're talking about. And there's no way you should be going on the air if you don't know what you're talking about. So that kind of stuff has to get done. So you got to find time for it, and you got to find what works for you, so that you know it. I found though that because I'm doing the notes and the stats and all that kind of stuff, that especially from the Red Deer stuff, that's all getting burned into my head. I'm not even looking at sheets because you just know, because you're doing it all the time. You're putting in the extra work with the opposition so that you knew a lot about them too.
And I guess we didn't note off the top, but with the Rebels too, you were their director of communications, so you had a lot more to do than just be on the air. And it's a craft. All that work goes into it. My prep was printing off some stats sheets and having a hot dog. So I mean, that's why I'm sitting here and you're calling games for the Edmonton Oilers. But yeah, it's an absolute craft, and I think we should write that down. Don't go on the air if you don't know what you're talking about, because we have not followed that yet. No.
Wow. Well, Mooner's been doing this for 22 plus years. We've been doing this for 22 days. Yeah. So he's got a few extra practice attempts under his belt.
And on the list, don't fight Dale Weise. Put that on there too.
Yeah.
Mooner, we'll let you get going here soon, but we got to switch to the big club because there is 3 super fans sitting downstairs, and the Oilers, I think you would know better than me, but I think have won 6 of 7 here as we sit here on February 12th. And McDavid and Draisaitl 1-2 in the league scoring. Just touch on your first, I guess, how many games in? Are they 15, 14 games as you move forward in your career here?
Well, it definitely looked when they first started like there was no preseason and a short training camp, which there was no preseason and there was a short training camp.
Makes sense.
Now it was the same for all the teams, but it looked to me like some teams got up to speed quicker than others. And the Oilers had a bit of bad luck in that Mike Smith got hurt before they ever played. So Mikko Koskinen had to play every game minus one that Stuart Skinner played and got the win. But Stuart Skinner still got maybe a little bit of work to do before he becomes an NHL regular. So all the eggs were in the Mikko Koskinen basket. So he had to just go, which I didn't think put him in the best situation, but he did what he could. Now that Mike Smith is healthy and playing, and both those guys can share the workload, that makes them both better goaltenders. The defense is scoring a ton of goals, which is great, but they're playing way better in their own end, which I think is a byproduct of just getting games under their belts and the emergence of some younger defensemen. William Laguson's played really well. Evan Bouchard's played very well. Like, that's great. Darnell Nurse is looking like a number 1 defenseman. And with Oscar Klefbom gone for the season, you need somebody to eat up some minutes. He's done that. Took Tyson Barrie a little while to find his groove with the Oilers. Again, I can chalk some of that up to not having any games until they started. And now he's kind of slid right into that position, is doing quite well. Everybody knows that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are 2 of the best players in the world. So that comes as no shock. And they've been really good. But now they're starting to see some production from the other 2 lines, and that's helping a lot. And those other 2 lines are now spending more time in the opposition end, so that's helping a lot too. So it makes me really optimistic as to what this team can do. Like at this point, at the time that we're recording this, Toronto looks like they're the number 1 team in the North. Well, the Oilers are 2-2 against them, so they've played well, and they've competed with those guys, and that's good to see. So it gives me optimism. It's really exciting. I love watching these guys play. I went to so many games as a kid growing up, going to Northlands. I grew up maybe about 15 minutes from that rink. So it is pretty special. But this team is they can compete. They can compete with any of them. And we expected Toronto would be good. I think a lot of people expected Calgary to be pretty good, and they are. And they're going to be, right in the mix as well, I think. So that's what makes the Battle of Alberta games so exciting moving forward, that they're going to mean a lot. And I think that'll be a lot of fun too.
Mooner, how do you think the Canadian teams that come out of this division are going to do at the end of the year against the other divisions? Is there a shot this year of a Canadian club taking home the cup?
I don't know why there wouldn't be. I would think so. I mean, I think whichever team comes out of this division is going to have as good a chance as any of getting to the Stanley Cup final. And then once you get there, I mean, you got a shot. So I think it's doable. I really, really like this Canadian division. Like maybe we don't do this all the time, but it sure is fun doing it now. Because even when the Oilers aren't playing and I see Winnipeg versus Vancouver, I'm totally invested. Like I'm going to watch this. I'm just absolutely into it. I think it's a lot of fun. The television numbers are reflecting that there's a lot of people in Canada that think the exact same thing as I do, because the numbers have been crazy good. And I just think this is a lot of fun. Now playoff time is going to be unbelievable. Maybe we could get us a Battle of Alberta in the playoffs, because I thought before everything got shut down that we had a decent shot of it happening last season. So I felt like we kind of got hooped on that a little bit.
So Mooner, while we're talking about teams and how they might do, so we're way ahead of the game for this interview. We've got 2 weeks till our next episode of this podcast drops. So February 25th, we want to test your fortune telling abilities a bit here. See if you can tell the future. Really simply, who do you think on February 25th, who will be the top 3 teams point wise in the NHL, and maybe like the top 5 in point scoring?
Oh, I got no idea. I got no clue. I can't predict that. If I did, I'd be a betting fiend.
Well, try your luck.
I'd be making
we can edit this, right? So, I mean, I think just McDavid, Draisaitl, you could throw in the mix easy, but or maybe where do you think the Oilers and Flames might be? Or because a lot can change in 2 weeks.
Well, true enough. I mean, who the heck knows? Like Montreal was going real strong there, and now they've hit a little bit of a tough spot. Like, are they going to come out of that? I think they will. They're 6 defense, and both their goalies are too good not to. And I expect Edmonton and Calgary to be right in that mix with, like, Toronto's pulled away a little bit here, but I expect Edmonton and Calgary to be right in the mix with Toronto and Montreal. So whatever mix of that, I don't know. I got no clue. You guys have as much insight on this as I do, quite honestly. So I don't think I can predict.
I think Ted's just looking for some betting advice.
Yeah.
So that's what he's trying to get at.
Yeah. That's usually what it comes down to.
Yeah. I mean, you never bet on your favorite team, right? So, and I've made a bit of money, maybe not as recently, but I made some money betting on the Oilers to lose, but that's a little harder to do these days. So
yeah, don't waste your money anymore.
Yeah. Misguided as that is.
All right, so last question, I guess, before we wrap up, because you talk about it's the hometown kid, Edmonton. You grew up in Edmonton. Now you're calling games for the Edmonton Oilers, and when you're in the WHL, a lot of guys, that is an amazing place to be. And were you looking, like, if the Florida Panthers had come calling, or one of those teams, would you have considered too making that move into the NHL, or is it because it's Edmonton, it's just an hour and a half move away and it's back to your hometown? Like, were you always looking for that NHL gig, or is this just the absolute, like, best case scenario for you?
It is best case scenario. I was not looking to leave Red Deer. This sort of found me, but this would be my first choice. If I had a list of all the teams, and somebody said, Cam, you can call the games for whichever team. And this isn't even like, this is the absolute truth. It would be number one. My wife and I bought a place in Edmonton a couple of years ago. I spend a fair bit of time there in the summer before this even happened. So yeah, it's home. That's where all my buddies are, the guys I grew up with and stuff. And I love going there. I like going to football games in the summer. I like doing all that kind of stuff. I like hanging out on White Ave. I like, all that. So yeah, this is number one. The fact that it came about is incredible, good, really good fortune. And I'm blessed, and I'm happy that it happened, because this is exactly where I want to be. So it's nice to be able to come home. I loved Red Deer. I had so much fun there, and loved the job, loved working for Brent and Connie Sutter and everybody that I worked with. It was awesome. And I'm lucky. And if I had just stayed there, I'm absolutely cool with that too. So, but this is unbelievable. So if it's a dream, I don't want to wake up.
It's awesome to hear, that it's exceeded your expectations, especially in a COVID year when it's definitely not normal. I think we should check in with you in another year when hopefully things are back to normal. And you've been to the Bell Center and all the historic arenas around the league and get some insights there. I'm sure you're itching to visit some of those places.
I can't wait. And you know what? I'm actually kind of thankful that I'm a little farther along in life when this has happened, because I don't know that if you're like getting the 23-year-old me to downtown Montreal on a Saturday, that's a great idea.
Well, there's always time to turn back the clock. You say you haven't been downtown Montreal yet. That's why you say that. Yeah.
Oh no, I've been there a few times. I just not for hockey. So yeah, I can't wait till there's actual people in rinks and broadcasters in rinks too. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we'll let you go. We know you're a busy guy, but thank you for doing this. And again, really cool to see you. You put so much time and effort into the Red Deer Rebels and the hockey community and the Red Deer community. So a big void in that press box, but I'm also excited to see now, the next person that comes in and is going to have all those opportunities. So I know you leave a huge hole in the Red Deer community, but amazing to see someone go from Red Deer and live their dream. So we wish you nothing but the best of luck, and I can't wait to see how your career with the Oilers grows.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. This has been great.
Thanks,
thanks Cam.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. Tune in to 6:30 Ched to hear old Cam.
That's right. Fire it up. Put it on.
6:30 Ched. We'll send you an invoice for that.
Yeah. $500.
Yeah. Thanks, boys.
Thanks, Mooner.
Okay, thanks.
Take care.
We'll talk to you.
Oh dear.